They said no human could survive the apex territory. But when Administrator Vextel lands for his inspection on day 30, he discovers the impossible. Instead of finding Zara's remains, he witnesses apex predators peacefully coexisting with her thriving camp. His chromatophores cycle through disbelief as deadly creatures perform for visitors like trained guides, transforming galactic understanding of death worlds forever. The Galactic Registry of Hazardous Zones occupied a dull, pewter-colored spire on Proxima Centauri's bustling administrative moon. Inside, behind quantum-locked doors and endless corridors of bureaucratic monotony, lurked the most feared classification in the known universe, Class 12 Extinction Zone. Only 17 planets across the explored galaxy had areas designated Class 12. These were places where nothing survived. Not military expeditions with their advanced weaponry. Not scientific teams with their protective fields. Not even the most adaptable extremophile microorganisms. These were places where the universe itself seemed determined to eradicate all forms of life. And among these 17 hellscapes, one reigned supreme in infamy, the apex territory of Kepler 442c. Administrator Vextel, a 7-limbed proximan with chromatophores that shifted from their usual calm blue to alarmed vermilion, stared at the application on his holoscreen. His eye stalks extended fully, all 5 of them, to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. "This can't be right," he muttered, his vocal sac inflating with agitation. "Felxor, are you seeing this?" His assistant, a neural uplifted AI in a hovering mechanical shell, drifted closer. "I am Administrator, Form 77B. Request for recreational reclassification of a hazardous zone. Applicant, Zara Blackwood. Species, human. Proposed activity, camping." "Camping," Vextel repeated, the word sounding alien and absurd, even through his universal translator. "In the apex territory. The southern continent of Kepler, 442c. "Yes," Felxor confirmed. "The application includes proposed coordinates that are, indeed, within the Class 12 Extinction Zone boundaries." Vextel's chromatophores cycled through alarm, red to disbelief purple. "Pull the statistics." Felxor projected a holographic display. 37 military expeditions, 0 survivors. 24 scientific survey teams, 0 survivors. 8 emergency rescue attempts, 0 survivors. Estimated mortality rate, 100%. Time to mortality, median of 14 standard hours, with a range from 30 minutes to 6 days. "And this human wants to camp there." Vextel's voice had taken on the flat tone of someone confronting such absurdity that emotion itself became irrelevant. "She has included a supply list," Felxor added helpfully. "It contains items such as marshmallows, sleeping bag, mosquito repellent, and hiking boots." Administrator Vextel sagged into his ergonomic support harness. In 300 cycles of service to the Galactic Registry, he had never encountered anything so preposterous. He was about to dismiss the application with extreme prejudice when a strange impulse seized him. "Schedule an interview with this human," he said instead. "I want to see what manner of creature submits such a request." 2 solar cycles later, Zara Blackwood stood before Administrator Vextel's desk. She was tall for a human, with dark skin that had the weathered look of someone who spent considerable time outdoors, and hair cropped close to her skull in practical fashion. Her eyes, Vextel noted with unease, contained a peculiar gleam that his species had come to recognize as the human phenomenon they called mischief. "Ms. Blackwood," he began, "do you understand what the apex territory is?" She smiled, revealing flat, herbivore-like teeth that somehow managed to look predatory. "Absolutely. It's the deadliest place in this sector of the galaxy, home to the razorback hounds, nightmare crawlers, venomous wasps the size of my forearm, and those lovely flying things, what do you call them? Yes. Ravenclaw stalkers. Each of which, Vextol emphasized, has independently killed armored military personnel in seconds. Fascinating creatures. Zara nodded appreciatively. I've studied the footage. Did you know the Ravenclaw stalkers have a specialized digestive system that can process metals? That's how they can eat through combat armor. Vextol's chromatophores pulsed with exasperation. Ms. Blackwood, no sentient being has survived longer than 6 days in the Apex territory. The indigenous predators are misunderstood, she interrupted. They're just hungry, territorial, and have evolved in an extreme environment. I'd like to get to know them better. Get to know them. Vextol was losing his diplomatic composure. These are not sentient conversation partners. They are killing machines evolved on a death world. Zara leaned forward. Her posture relaxed, but her eyes intensely focused. Administrator, I'm a xenobiologist by training. Before I decided that the corporate research path was too limiting, I specialized in predator-prey relationships on 57 different worlds. What nobody has tried with the Apex territory creatures is a non-threatening approach. Because they're dead before they can try, Vextol's limbs gesticulated wildly. Military teams go in with weapons. Scientific teams go in with disruptive equipment. Both register as threats. She tapped her temple. I'm going in with camping gear and food offerings. Vextol's chromatophores settled into a resigned gray. Ms. Blackwood, I cannot in good conscience approve this application. It would be sanctioning suicide. Zara smiled again. And this time, Vextol recognized another human expression. Determination. Regulation 459B, subsection 12, paragraph 3, she recited. A Class 12 zone may be reclassified for recreational use if a sentient being demonstrates sustained survivability for a minimum of 30 standard days, followed by a formal inspection. The administrator stared at her, speechless. She had memorized the regulations, the very ones that should have dissuaded her. I'm not asking for approval, Zara continued, her voice pleasant but unyielding. I'm informing you of my intent to establish the legal basis for reclassification. My ship, the Wandering Spirit, is already stocked with 3 tons of supplies. I'll be departing for Kepler 442c tomorrow. Vextol slumped in his harness. You realize we won't be able to extract you once you're there. The electromagnetic anomalies and atmospheric conditions make it impossible to teleport or send in rescue craft if you activate a distress beacon. I'm aware, she said, standing up and extending her hand, a human gesture of agreement. But if I succeed, Administrator, think of the possibilities. An entirely new recreational frontier, exclusive tours, research opportunities, the first ever Class 12 resort. Against every instinct of self-preservation and common sense, Vextol extended a limb to touch her hand. 30 days, he said, feeling as though he was signing her death warrant. If, and this is an astronomical if, you survive 30 days, I will personally conduct the inspection. Perfect, Zara beamed. I'll send postcard hollows. As she turned to leave, Vextol's assistant, Felxor, hovered close. Administrator, should we prepare the standard obituary notice? Yes. Vextol sighed, his chromatophores darkening to mournful indigo. And notify Omega-7 monitoring station near Kepler 442c. Tell them to keep observation drones active. At the very least, we should document what happens for the survival manuals. Felxor paused, processing. Sir, Regulation 732 prohibits voyeuristic observation of fatal incidents for entertainment purposes. This isn't entertainment, Vextol said grimly. It's education. Future generations should know exactly why we classify some places as Class 12. The Wandering Spirit was not a large vessel, but Zara had modified it extensively for her unique lifestyle. The cargo hold had been converted into a combination laboratory, workshop, and storage facility, currently packed with everything from basic camping supplies to specialized equipment she had designed herself. As the ship entered Kepler 442c's atmosphere, Zara reviewed her final preparations in the cockpit. The planet loomed below, a study in extreme contrasts: vivid blue oceans, verdant green rainforests, and sprawling amber plains, all belying the lethal nature of its ecosystem. "Ship, display territorial boundaries," she commanded. A red overlay appeared on her view screen, demarcating the infamous apex territory, a roughly circular region approximately 300 kilometers in diameter, encompassing jungle, savanna, and marsh habitats in the planet's southern continent. Recommended landing site? The ship's AI highlighted a small clearing near the edge of a jungle region. Warning: all locations within apex territory boundaries have a calculated survival probability of less than 0.001%. Noted, Zara said, adjusting her course. But calculations don't account for marshmallows. The ship dipped lower, slicing through cloud layers. Atmospheric sensors screamed warnings about toxin levels, microscopic airborne parasites, and ambient radiation from the planet's unstable core. "Engaging biofilters," she murmured, making minor adjustments. "Just need to breathe long enough to make friends." The wandering spirit touched down with surprising gentleness, given the treacherous crosswinds. As the engines cycled down, external sensors came fully online, bombarding the cockpit displays with threat assessments. Movement detected: 17 life forms approaching from north-northwest. Biological threat analysis: extreme. Recommended action: immediate departure. Zara grinned at the readouts. Right on schedule. She activated the ship's defensive shields, not to keep threats out, but to give herself time to establish base camp before the local welcoming committee arrived. Over the next 4 hours, she worked with methodical efficiency, unloading essential supplies and erecting a surprisingly homey campsite 50 meters from her ship. The centerpiece was a reinforced tent with transparent walls that could be opacity adjusted. Around it, she arranged storage containers, a field kitchen, and a small generator that hummed quietly. Most importantly, she set up a perimeter, not of weapons or barriers, but of food stations. Each contained different offerings: synthesized meat products, nutrient-rich pastes formulated to appeal to various predator species, and carbohydrate-rich treats that her research suggested might appeal to the native omnivores. As sunset painted Kepler 442c's sky in violent shades of crimson and gold, Zara settled into a collapsible chair outside her tent, a mug of steaming tea in her hands. "Ship, reduce shields to 50% and prepare to document all encounters," she said calmly. The shields dimmed visibly, and Zara took a deliberate sip of her tea. She didn't have to wait long. The first Ravenclaw stalker emerged from the jungle edge like a nightmare given physical form. Standing nearly 2 meters tall, its body was a sinuous blend of avian and reptilian features, iridescent black feathers covering a saurian frame, with 6 limbs tipped with metallic-looking claws that evolutionary biology couldn't fully explain. Its head swiveled on a serpentine neck, dominated by compound eyes that glowed faintly in the gathering twilight. Zara remained motionless, except for the slow movement of her cup to her lips. The Ravenclaw paused, clearly detecting her but seemingly confused by her lack of reaction. It tilted its head, the gesture almost bird-like, then took another step forward. 2 more emerged behind it, then 3 more. Within minutes, a pack of 12 surrounded the perimeter of her camp at a cautious distance. "Hello there," Zara said softly, making no sudden movements. "I brought dinner." The lead Ravenclaw approached one of the food stations, its metallic claws extended. With lightning speed, it speared a chunk of synthesized meat, but instead of retreating, it remained in place, examining the offering with obvious suspicion. "It's not poisoned," Zara assured it, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words but keeping her tone gentle. Just a gift, neighbor to neighbor. The Ravenclaw consumed the meat in one swift motion, then looked directly at Zara, with an intensity that would have sent most sentient beings running for their lives. Instead, she raised her mug in a small salute. "See, we can be civilized about this." To her surprise, though she'd hoped for this outcome, the Ravenclaw didn't immediately attack. Instead, it approached another food station, then another, sampling each offering. The others in the pack followed suit, moving with predatory grace but displaying none of the frenzied aggression documented in previous encounters with off-worlders. Across the sector, in the sterile corridors of Omega-7 Monitoring Station, Commander Zaktar stared at the live feed from Kepler 442c, with mandibles agape. "This is impossible," the insectoid officer chittered to his crew. "The human has been on the surface for 7 hours and 22 minutes. The Ravenclaw pack has made no attack attempts." His second-in-command, Officer Zell, magnified a portion of the screen. "Sir, they appear to be eating from designated stations, while the human observes." The monitoring room fell silent as the implications settled over them. Every previous expedition, military, scientific, and rescue, had been met with immediate and overwhelming aggression from the local predators. "Could the human be using some form of chemical pacification?" suggested tactical specialist Norvik. "Sensors detect no aerosol dispersal or psychotropic compounds," reported the station's AI. "The predators appear to be behaving voluntarily." Commander Zaktar clicked his mandible spines together, a gesture of deep thought in his species. "Begin taking wagers," he finally announced. "Standard protocol for Class 12 observation. Opening odds, human survival beyond 24 hours, 1001. As the crew scrambled to place their bets, Officer Zell continued watching the screen. "Sir," she said quietly, "what if she actually survives?" The commander's compound eyes glittered. "Then, officer, we will have witnessed the impossible. But she won't. The Ravenclaws are merely curious. When night falls completely, the nightmare crawlers will emerge, and not even the Galactic Peacekeeping Force's most elite units have survived an encounter with those." On the surface, Zara was indeed watching the sky darken, well aware of what the nighttime hours would bring. As the last light faded, the Ravenclaws retreated to the jungle edge, not departing entirely, but establishing a watchful perimeter. Zara retreated to her tent, adjusting the transparency to keep visual contact with her surroundings, while activating the tent's subtle warming features against the planet's dramatic nocturnal temperature drop. "Ship, status report," she whispered. "External temperatures dropping to -20 Celsius. Atmospheric toxicity increasing by 17%. Nocturnal spore release cycle beginning. Biosensors detecting subterranean movement, consistent with nightmare crawler emergence patterns." Zara nodded, setting up additional food stations just outside the tent's entrance. These contained different offerings, fermented protein compounds with high ammonia content, which her research suggested might appeal to the nightmare crawler's unusual metabolism. "Let's see if dinner diplomacy works twice," she murmured, settling onto her sleeping pad with a data tablet. She began recording observations about the Ravenclaw's behavior, completely unfazed when the ground 20 meters away erupted upward. The nightmare crawler that emerged bore little resemblance to any terrestrial life form, best described as a cross between a centipede and a mole. Its 3-meter length was covered in chitinous plates that absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating the impression of a moving shadow. Multiple eyeless, sensory nodes protruded from its segmented body, and its front end opened into a circular maw, ringed with vibrating feelers. "Right on schedule," Zara noted, making no attempt to hide or flee, as 3 more erupted from the ground at different points around her camp. The nightmare crawlers moved with surprising grace for their bulk, gliding over the ground on hundreds of fine, hair-like appendages that distributed their weight. They approached the food stations with cautious movements, their sensory nodes pulsing with bioluminescent blue light. The first crawler reached an offering and extended feelers to investigate it. After a moment of examination, it consumed the fermented protein mass whole, its body undulating as specialized digestive processes began immediately. Zara continued recording notes, her expression one of scientific fascination rather than terror. Nightmare crawlers displaying investigative behavior rather than immediate aggression. Hypothesis: previous encounters triggered territorial response due to perceived threat. Non-threatening approach with appropriate food offerings appears to establish neutral or positive first contact. By dawn, Zara had documented interactions with 4 distinct apex predator species of Kepler 442c, each approaching her camp, investigating her offerings, and, most importantly, departing without attacking. The Ravenclaws had maintained their perimeter watch throughout the night, seemingly as fascinated by her as she was by them. As the alien sun crested the horizon, Zara emerged from her tent, stretched languorously, and began preparing a breakfast of reconstituted eggs and synthesized bacon on her field stove. The aroma drifted across the clearing, drawing curious approaches from smaller indigenous creatures that resembled a cross between squirrels and bats. "Morning, neighbors," she called cheerfully, tossing small morsels to the creatures, who chittered excitedly as they snatched them from the air. At the Omega-7 monitoring station, the overnight crew stared at their screens in disbelief. 26 hours, Officer Zell announced, her voice hushed. No previous expedition survived beyond 24 in the Apex territory. Commander Zaktar had refused to leave his post, his exoskeleton now dulled from stress and sleeplessness. Maintain observation. This is unprecedented. Sir, the tactical officer reported. Betting pools have crashed the station's internal network. Current survival odds have shifted to 50.1 for a 3-day survival. And the nightmare crawlers, Zaktar demanded. They brought her things, sir. What things? The commander's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. Our analysts believe they were offering soil samples containing rare mineral deposits, almost like gifts in exchange for the food she provided. Zaktar's compound eyes narrowed. That's impossible. Nightmare crawlers don't have the cognitive capacity for trade. The evidence suggests otherwise, sir. Back on the planet's surface, Zara's second day proceeded with a methodical scientific rhythm. She extended her camp, setting up research equipment to analyze soil, air, and water samples. She established more permanent feeding stations at strategic points and began a tentative mapping expedition, never venturing more than 100 meters from her base camp. The Ravenclaws followed her at a respectful distance, occasionally bringing down small game animals which they consumed near her, almost as if demonstrating their hunting techniques. Fascinating social behavior, Zara recorded in her log. The pack structure appears more complex than previously documented. There's clear communication happening between individuals, and they seem to be deliberately showing me their territorial boundaries. By the 5th day, something remarkable had happened. The perimeter around Zara's camp had transformed into a bizarre interspecies gathering area. Nightmare crawlers emerged at regular intervals, bringing unusual objects from their subterranean network. Ravenclaw stalkers maintained a complex patrol pattern, occasionally driving off smaller predators that approached too aggressively. Even the venomous wasps, each the size of Zara's forearm, had established a temporary nest in a tree near the edge of camp. Their normally aggressive territorial displays now focused outward, as if protecting the camp rather than threatening it. Zara expanded her tent into a more substantial structure, adding sections for research, food preparation, and storage. She began cataloging the complex ecological relationships she was observing, documenting behaviors never before recorded. Day 12, she narrated to her ship's recording system. I believe what we're witnessing is the formation of a symbiotic relationship. By providing consistent, non-threatening food sources and respecting territorial boundaries, I've been accepted as a neutral or possibly beneficial presence in the ecosystem. The predator species appear to be adapting their behaviors to accommodate my presence, perhaps recognizing potential mutual benefits. She paused, watching as a ravenclaw dragged the carcass of a large herbivore to the edge of her camp, not as a threat, but clearly as an offering. Most significantly, I've observed no attempts to test me as potential prey. My hypothesis is that the extreme evolutionary pressures of this environment have selected for intelligence and adaptability rather than just aggression. These aren't mindless killing machines. They're highly sophisticated predators capable of complex decision-making. At Omega-7, the monitoring room had been expanded to accommodate the growing number of officials, scientists, and military observers who demanded access to the live feeds. Commander Zakhtar, now something of a celebrity for his station's documentation of the Blackwood Miracle, as galactic media had dubbed it, maintained a rigorous rotation of personnel to ensure 24-hour observation. 2 weeks, he announced to the assembled crowd. The human has survived 2 standard weeks in the Apex territory. This exceeds the previous record by a factor of 5. A galactic registry official, dispatched from central headquarters, studied the feeds with obvious skepticism. There must be an explanation. Some technology we're not detecting, or a biological adaptation unique to humans. We've run every scan in the handbook, Officer Zell replied. The only technology she's using is standard camping gear and her research equipment. No weapons, no defensive systems beyond her ship's basic shields, which she only activates during severe weather events. Then how? The official demanded. Commander Zakhtar gestured to a screen, showing Zara sitting calmly beside a nightmare crawler, both seemingly enjoying the planet's double moonrise. She brought snacks, he said simply. Back at Galactic Registry headquarters, Administrator Vextel found himself becoming something of a reluctant celebrity. As the official, who had processed Zara Blackwood's outlandish application, he was now besieged by media inquiries, scientific delegations, and tourism industry representatives. No, I cannot explain how she's doing it, he repeated for what felt like the 1,000th time to a persistent Arcturian journalist. And no, we are not accepting additional applications for camping expeditions to Class 12 extinction zones. Felxor hovered nearby, managing the deluge of incoming communications. Administrator, we've received another update from Ms. Blackwood. Day 17. She's established what she calls greeting protocols with 7 apex predator species and has begun rudimentary mapping expeditions up to 1 kilometer from her base camp. Vextel's chromatophores flushed with a complex mixture of amazement and professional concern. Has she submitted any formal documentation for her research findings? Yes, sir. 342 pages of field notes, plus 76 hours of recorded observations. The Xenobiological Institute is calling it the most significant breakthrough in predator ecology in 500 years. The administrator sank into his support harness. And I'm still scheduled to conduct the 30-day inspection. Yes, sir. Ms. Blackwood specifically requested your presence, should she reach the 30-day benchmark. Vextel's chromatophores darkened to a contemplative blue-gray. Prepare a ship. When she reaches day 25. I want to be in orbit above Kepler 442c. On day 20, Zara Blackwood began the next phase of her plan. Her base camp had evolved from a simple tent to a complex of interconnected structures, some designed for research, others for storage and living space. More significantly, the surrounding area had transformed into what she had begun calling the interface, a zone where apex predators and smaller species gathered in a tense but functional ecosystem of her design. Ship, transmit the following message to all galactic registry frequencies, she instructed, adjusting her field jacket. Attention potential visitors. Apex Camp is now accepting limited reservation requests for the upcoming quarter. Experience the galaxy's most extreme camping destination with expert guidance and guaranteed safety protocols. Witness apex predators in their natural habitat without becoming their dinner. Premium packages include Ravenclaw tracking expeditions and nightmare crawler tunneling demonstrations. Inquire about our special discount for Galactic Registry officials. She grinned broadly at her ship's external camera. Oh, and Administrator Vextul, your cabin is ready whenever you'd like to conduct that inspection. I think you'll find the Apex territory meets all requirements for recreational reclassification, with certain safety guidelines, of course. The message rocketed across subspace channels, creating an immediate sensation. Within hours, Zara's ship had received over 3,000 reservation requests, along with scientific expedition proposals, documentary filming applications, and a formal note from Administrator Vextul confirming his planned arrival on day 30. Zara spent the following days expanding her camp's capacity, establishing clearer boundaries with her predator neighbors, and codifying the protocols that had allowed her to survive. She conducted test excursions with remote-operated drones to simulate visitor experiences, carefully noting how the predators responded to these new intrusions into their territory. To her delight, the apex species showed remarkable adaptability. The Ravenclaws, in particular, seemed to grasp the concept that these mechanical visitors were connected to the food sources Zara provided. Rather than attacking the drones, they began escorting them along safe paths, occasionally performing dramatic hunting displays at a distance, almost as if rehearsing for an audience. Day 27, Zara recorded, watching a nightmare crawler delicately manipulate a drone with its sensory feelers. I believe we're witnessing the beginning of a revolutionary form of ecotourism. These creatures are intelligent enough to understand mutual benefit. They tolerate observers in exchange for consistent food sources and respect for their core territories. With proper protocols, the Apex territory could become the most exclusive destination in the galaxy, a place where visitors can safely witness apex predators that have killed every other off-world visitor in history. She turned her camera to pan across the camp, now resembling a small research station more than a simple campsite. More importantly, we're overturning centuries of assumptions about Class 12 environments. These aren't simply death worlds. They're complex ecosystems we've failed to understand because our approach has always been based on dominance rather than cooperation. On the morning of day 30, Zara stood at the edge of her camp, watching as a galactic registry vessel descended through Kepler 442c's atmosphere. She had dressed for the occasion in what she called her expedition best, practical field clothes that had been carefully cleaned, with a custom jacket emblazoned with her newly designed Apex Camp logo. Around her, the normal activities of the interface continued. Ravenclaws lounged in the morning sun near their feeding stations. Nightmare crawlers had partially surfaced, their sensory nodes pulsing curiously at the approaching ship. Even the venomous wasps maintained their patrol patterns, seemingly undisturbed by the new arrival. The registry vessel landed with precision 100 meters from Zara's camp. Its shields remained fully engaged as the main hatch opened, revealing a visibly nervous Administrator Vextul, flanked by 2 security officers and what appeared to be a medical team. "Welcome to Apex Camp," Zara called cheerfully, walking toward them with relaxed confidence. "You can lower your shields. Our neighbors won't bother you as long as you follow the protocols I've transmitted." Vextul's chromatophores cycled rapidly through disbelief and alarm as he took in the scene, particularly the massive Ravenclaw stalker that had risen to follow Zara at a respectful distance. "Ms. Blackwood," he managed, his voice strangled. You actually survived." "Survived?" Zara laughed. "Administrator, I've thrived. Come, I'll give you the official tour." Over the next several hours, Vextul and his team were led through what could only be described as a miracle of xenobiological engineering. Zara had mapped safe zones, established clear interaction protocols, and created a functioning relationship with creatures that had killed hundreds of armed personnel in previous expeditions. "It's all about respect," she explained, as they watched a nightmare crawler demonstrate how it constructed its tunnel network, seemingly performing for their benefit. "These creatures aren't mindless killing machines. They're territorial apex predators who responded to perceived threats. Previous expeditions arrived with weapons and defensive technology, triggering immediate aggression. I arrived with food and patience." Vextul's chromatophores had settled into a stunned cyan. "This defies every xenobiological principle in our databases. Your databases were written by beings who approached new environments, looking to conquer rather than coexist," Zara replied, tossing a nutrient ball to a waiting Ravenclaw, who caught it with graceful precision. "I came to camp, not to claim." The administrator watched as the massive predator settled peacefully nearby. "And this arrangement is sustainable?" "Absolutely. I've documented steady-state ecological impacts. The feeding program is designed to supplement without creating dependency. And the tourism model I'm proposing includes strict visitor quotas and mandatory safety training." She led them to the main structure of her camp, now expanded into a comfortable visitor center with observation areas and research stations. Inside, holographic displays showed detailed maps of the surrounding territory, behavioral analyses of the major predator species, and proposed visitor experiences. "I've already received over 10,000 reservation requests," Zara noted casually. "At the premium pricing tier, of course. This will be the most exclusive destination in the sector." Vextul examined the business plan she presented with growing amazement. "You've thought of everything." "I'm a xenobiologist by training, but an entrepreneur by nature," she smiled. "Now, about that recreational reclassification." The administrator's chromatophores shifted to official registry purple. "According to Regulation 459B, having confirmed your survival for the required 30-day period and conducted a formal inspection, I am authorized to initiate reclassification proceedings. However, given the unprecedented nature of this situation, I believe a new classification category may be warranted." Zara raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "Class 2R, Restricted Recreation Zone. Limited access under expert guidance, with mandatory safety protocols." Vextul extended a formal limb. "Congratulations, Ms. Blackwood. You've made galactic history." 6 months later, Zara Blackwood stood on the observation deck of the significantly expanded Apex camp, watching as a shuttle arrived with the latest group of adventure tourists. Below, the once feared interface had evolved into a carefully managed zone where visitors could witness apex predators in their natural habitat, all under the watchful eyes of Zara's trained staff and their Ravenclaw security detail. The Galactic Registry had been forced to create an entirely new bureaucratic department to handle the implications of Zara's success. Research teams from across the galaxy now studied her methods, seeking applications for other hostile environments. Military academies had incorporated what they called Blackwood protocols into their xenobiological training, emphasizing non-aggressive first contact approaches. Most significantly, pharmaceutical companies had paid astronomical sums for access to the biological compounds Zara had discovered during her research. Compounds produced by the apex predators that held promise for treating everything from neurological disorders to cellular regeneration. "Ms. Blackwood," her assistant called, approaching with a data tablet. "The latest figures from Registry headquarters. 3 more Class 12 zones have been approved for exploratory reclassification assessment using your protocols." Zara smiled, scratching behind the auditory ridge of the juvenile Ravenclaw that had appointed itself her personal companion. "And the new hazard classification system? Implemented galaxy-wide as of yesterday. Class H, human involvement expected. applied to any previously designated hazardous zone where human intervention has significantly altered risk assessments. She laughed softly. I suppose that's better than stubborn human refuses to accept impossibility. Her assistant grinned. Administrator Vextol sends his regards. He's been promoted to head the new Recreation Reclassification Division. Apparently, you've created an entirely new sector of the galactic economy. Not bad for a camping trip, Zara mused, watching as the tourist shuttle landed. Its passengers emerged cautiously, their expressions shifting from trepidation to wonder as they witnessed Ravenclaws lounging peacefully near the landing pad. A Galactic News Network team had accompanied this group, their cameras capturing the moment when a nightmare crawler emerged to investigate the newcomers. Not as a threat, but as a curious neighbor checking out the latest arrivals. Welcome to Apex Camp, Zara called, walking forward to greet her guests. Where the impossible is just a matter of perspective. Behind her, posted prominently at the camp entrance, hung a simple sign that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Apex Territory, Class 2R, Human Negotiated Recreation Zone. All visitors must follow safety protocols. Remember the first rule of survival. Always bring enough snacks to share.